Home to me was an early fair housing organization that went way out for its time period in terms of testing, in terms of public relations, and in terms of making a commitment to minorities looking for housing who had been turned down in one way or another. In the early days, it was a very small group of people who would sacrifice for their ideals.
Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy, and we did come in some ways kicking and screaming into the 20th century on some of these issues. But the good news is that there were a group of people in Richmond who wanted more, who wanted better. And Barbara Wurtzel was one of those.
She was confident in her view that the world needed to eradicate discrimination and improve fairness and opportunity.
Barbara was just simply extraordinary. She was quiet, persistent, diligent, conscientious, and she believed deeply in the values that she promoted.
When Home got started with the basic group of people, there was a passion that they shared, change. And they knew that change started in several ways, with the law, education, to get out there and have some action. This group of people were working on how to implement that whole process.
Jim Hecht worked laboriously to get people interested in establishing Home. I took notes at meetings, monthly meetings, for several months. At one of the meetings, Barbara was hired.
She was determined that we were going to have this organization. Home became her avenue to do something, to make change.
She was completely committed to the mission of Home. She believed in the power of the civil rights laws.
When I went to work for Home, Barbara was my boss. And for the next 5 years, I found her to be an enormously capable person who was running what I thought was an extraordinary organization.
She who had been a quiet, shy person, she was gangbusters. She understood the importance of this, and this was her mission.
I think the most important thing about Barbara was her vision that the organization could have many tentacles and lots of different effects on the fair housing market in Richmond without excluding anything. Litigation important, testing important, education important, counseling to people who face discrimination or just looking for a home as important as well. And it was Barbara who really gave birth to the idea of the Havens case.
I think her proudest moment as executive director of Home would have been the Havens settlement, which really put Home on the map in many, many ways.
Havens and Barbara's contribution to it remains highly relevant today. It was a revolutionary case in 1983 because it said not only is testing an appropriate mechanism, but it is, in fact, the basis for you to get into court and to stay in court to try to undo the discriminatory practice.
She was absolutely central to the case and the guiding spirit.
She showed up as a first-year law student in Charlottesville just a few months after she and Home had won the Havens case at the Supreme Court. It was clear to me that Barbara, having had a full career before coming to law school, was much more centered in the world. She had a sense of how the world worked. She understood that law school for her was going to be a vehicle for making the world a better place.
Her proudest moment probably would also have been watching a staff person come into their own and grow into their own.
Barbara saw something in me and gave me the opportunity and mentored me as I think we as women should.
Barbara Wurtzel was definitely my mentor as organizational leader, executive director. Almost everything she did ended up being absolutely right. And I used those lessons for the rest of my life.
Barbara was a shero to me. She was like a goddess.
Her moral compass was so clear that it helped the rest of us to see the importance of advocating what we actually felt and not merely settling for what was polite.
She cared about doing quality work. She cared about making sure that institutions thrived and that fair housing organizations could be good and could do the work, the important work that we have to do in each of our communities.
To think back that Barbara was one of those people at the very beginning who put together this organization and made it thrive the way she did was truly extraordinary.
To me, Barbara Wurtzel was a force of nature, quiet, persistent, and driven. She got things done, including establishing home at a time when the fair housing laws were new and still controversial. She treated everyone the same and worked diligently for social justice, believing that all men and women were created equal and needed an equal share of the financial pie. We were friends, and I'll value her friendship forever.
Her legacy is home. That's what her legacy is.